Good morning. This time we'll call to order the Board of County Commissioners meeting for Thursday, January 18. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Schaefer.
Here.
Commissioner Allen.
Here.
Commissioner Clickham.
Here.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Here.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Here.
Commissioner Brown.
Here.
And Chairman Eilert.
Here. All are present. We do have a quorum. Would you join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would ask of those who are in attendance this morning, if you have a noise-making device, would you turn it to silent mode or off so as not to interfere with electronic communications? I should note that there's been a lot of discussion in the press about the local government meetings being telecast or broadcast or something like that. And I just wanted to note that ours have been broadcast for years, maybe a decade or longer, and we continue to have these meetings streamed and accessible to the public if they choose to watch. So, we do not have any presentations to make this morning. We'll turn to the public comment portion of our agenda. If there's anyone present who would like to address the Commission on an item which does not later appear on the agenda, welcome you to the podium. State your name and address. Limit your comments to 5 minutes, and we'll be glad to receive that information. Mr. Raby.
Good morning. Tom Raby, 17513 West 113th Street in Olathe. And I missed a couple of weeks. I did watch you guys on
Well, it was cold, as I recall, so that's understandable.
And going away, none of you were here, so you don't remember this. But I asked the question back in probably 01 or 02, why the heck can't you stream these meetings? Because Olathe City Council meetings were already online. And I believe it was Commissioner Lindstrom who prodded a little bit, and it wasn't too long till we got it done. So I may not have been the prime mover, but I sure as heck prodded the cattle in the right direction. I looked up on my way here this morning, and there's not a cloud in the sky. And I'll venture to say not a single, maybe one or two of you looked up and thought the same thing. There's one. And but this is a Fred Rogers Day, and for you who don't know who Fred Rogers was, think of Mr. Rogers. And he said it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, which it is. But the other thing is, there's been a lot of homage and patronage and everything else concerning Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in the past week or two, and lots of praise. But a lot of people forget to remember the message. Dr. King never varied from his message of nonviolence. He would not have approved of rioting and looting and so-called protesting with a vengeance. He was a student of and a very great admirer of Gandhi, who believed in nonviolent demonstrations and nonviolent protests. And that's what made him what he was. But that's as a civil rights leader. How many of you ever listened to one of Dr. King's sermons as a minister? And he was a fantastic minister. For those of you who, you know, and I don't know what church anybody goes to or what synagogue or what other religious services, but for those of us who grew up in a church, there's nothing more satisfying than to listen to a good preacher deliver a message. And Dr. King was a good preacher. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, thank you for the time today. Thank you, sir, for those words of wisdom. If you ever need a substitute, give me a call. I'm Bill Miller, 9509 Corliss Court, DeSoto, Kansas. And I'm coming before you today. I am going to ask for action, and I'll briefly explain that we're having some conflict out in DeSoto and Northwest Johnson County with our Northwest Consolidated Fire District, which has performed very well since 2014 under our current chief, as evidenced by an ISO rating, which, by the way, ISO rating I didn't know much about until I started looking into this, but it is a professional measurement that measures the preparedness of your fire district, has a large effect on your property insurance premiums. In 2014, when our chief took over, we were in the bottom 40% in the nation by that measurement. We're now in the top 11. So to get to the point, about a month ago, two members of the fire board, and by the way, the fire board is comprised, many of you probably know this, but for the public, Northwest Consolidated Johnson County Fire Board comprised of two members appointed by Johnson County government, two members by this board, two members appointed by the DeSoto City Council, and one member alternately appointed by election cycle by one entity or the other. The current member is appointed by the Board of County Commissioners. So about a month ago, two members of our fire board approached our chief and attempted to negotiate his resignation. He's not interested in resigning. Both of these members that approached him have relatives who work on the fire department. It's a 22-member fire department. Both of these gentlemen were recently promoted to lieutenant on the fire department, which would put them roughly fourth or fifth in charge. And these two board members were the only two board members to communicate with the chief about his performance evaluation and or his potential resignation. And that just makes me uncomfortable. And it makes some of our citizens uncomfortable. So Chairman Walt McDaniel, his son is a lieutenant and board member, and by the way, Walt is the alternating position. He's appointed by the Board of County Commissioners. And then board member Doug Bedford has a nephew who is a lieutenant. Doug is appointed by the DeSoto City Council. So when this conflict of interest was identified, the board sort of backed up and called a special meeting. I'm not sure if the meeting was properly communicated 24 hours in advance. I didn't see it on their website until after the fact, or it didn't appear. But regardless, they called a special meeting, didn't have any public comment at the meeting, went into executive session, and came back out, put the chief on paid administrative leave, while a third party comes in and does a professional a third-party human resource specialist comes in and does a performance evaluation on the chief. We're never going to know if the chief has performance issues or not. It doesn't look like that on the surface based on the performance and the professionalism of the department, but hey, it's always going to be private. We'll never know. So some other citizens of DeSoto and I got together and we approached our city council. We approached Commissioner Brown. We couldn't get anybody to really intervene. The mayor of DeSoto did go to the special meeting and handed the board a letter, which I'm not certain exactly what the letter said. We presume that the letter asked them to delay action. The action was not delayed. So their chief's on paid leave while a performance evaluation is being done by a third-party HR, and which de facto promotes these two fire lieutenants whose uncle and dad are on the board. And that makes me uncomfortable. I've expressed this to Commissioner Brown. He doesn't want to intervene. He feels like that group of folks that are on that board are of high integrity and are doing their job. I question that. So, as it relates to today's Board of County Commissioners meeting,
Miller, you're running out of your 5 minutes.
can I have 30 seconds to wrap it up?
Well, that's fine. If you're going to speak to an item that's later on the agenda, you'll have an opportunity to do so at that time.
Well, this is on the consent agenda.
Pardon?
This is on the consent agenda.
Well, but anyone present has the ability to pull an item off the
If you'll give me 20 seconds, I'll wrap it up and make my request.
All right.
You won't hear from me
Go ahead.
again. So my request is to the commission to pull the item. There's an item on your consent agenda that is reappointing one of our board members to our fire board, A.J. Lane. I think in the interest of the public, while an investigation is underway into the ethics violations that I think have occurred and several other community members, please pull that from the consent agenda and table that action until we can clarify our issues at the fire board. Fire board. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else? All right, there being no one else to be heard, the public comment portion of our agenda is concluded. Following up on Mr. Raby's comments about Martin Luther King celebrations, I should note that the Johnson County Museum has developed a spatial digital exhibit in honor of Dr. King. It's free. It's located in the Commons area of the Arts and Heritage Center. It does not necessarily focus on Dr. King, but goes back into the early 30s and shares information about several of the African American leaders that were active in Johnson County prior to and after the Civil Rights Act and Brown versus Board of Education. Many probably are not aware that there was a prior court case called Webb versus School District number 90 that occurred in 1948. A lot of good, interesting information about individuals and institutions in the county at that time. So I would encourage you, if you have an interest, again, it's free. It's located in the Commons area of the Arts and Heritage Center. Go by and visit. Thank you. I do have a couple of notes for the record. I will be signing an administrative resolution number WD 18-007, enlarging the privately financed sewer district and provide for the assessments of all applicable fees, charges, and levies of the Consolidated Main Sewer District in the vicinity of University Drive and 162nd Street. This is located in District 6. I will also be signing two parallel or partial release of easement for the Consolidated Main Sewer District due to the removal of sanitary sewer lines, one in the vicinity of 80th and Broadmoor Street, and the other in the vicinity of 62nd Street and Lowell Avenue, both in the city of Overland Park. Thirdly, I will be signing three partial release of easement for the Consolidated Main Sewer District due to the removal of sanitary sewer lines in the vicinity of 159th Street and South Merlin Road, another in the vicinity of 159th Street and South Black Bog Road, and another one in the vicinity of West 133rd Street and Flum Road, all in the city of Olathe. And I will finally, I will be signing an agreement with the city of Leawood for the public improvement of Mission Road from 119th Street to 127th Street. That concludes notes for the record. Moving to the consent agenda, will the clerk please read the proposed consent agenda items?
Item number 1, consider ratifying the chairman's appointment of Dennis Kissinger to the Airport Commission through July 31, 2020. Item number 2, consider ratifying the chairman's appointment of Eric Erazo to the Criminal Justice Advisory Council through October 2, 2018. Item number 3, consider appointing Heidi Thummel as the 2nd District Representative to the Transportation Council through August 31, 2020. And item number 4, consider reappointing A.J. Lang as the 6th District Representative to the Northwest Consolidated Fire District through December 31, 2020.
Is there any commissioner who would like to have an item considered separately? Mr. Allen.
At the request of Mr. Miller, for discussion only, I would ask that item 4.
Okay, very good. Is there anyone else who would like to have an item considered separately? All right, there being no one else to be heard is back for the commission. A motion approving 1 through 3 would be in order. Mr. Osterhaus.
I'll move that we approve consent agenda items 1 through 3 as read.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the consent agenda items 1 through 3 as noted. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Schaefer?
Aye.
Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Clickham?
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown?
Aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye, motion carried. Turning to item number 4, Mr. Miller has already spoken to that item. Mr. Brown, do you have any comments?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My selection and reappointment of A.J. Lang, or Jay Lang, is based on his experience many years on the fire board and other boards in service to our county. I know Jay personally. I know him professionally, and I know him as a volunteer member of our fire board and other boards he has served on in the county, and I find him to be of the utmost integrity, and I would urge and am prepared to make a motion to approve him as appointment to the fire board.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Ashcraft?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Brown, well stated. I have probably not known Mr. Lang as long as you have, but have found him to be of standing. I'm a little confused by this reappointment, how that might affect this issue. This is new to me, and since it's a personnel issue, Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure I'm comfortable discussing it in a public setting, and I'm not even sure we have that authority. So any direction there would be...
obviously, any personnel issue we are not able to discuss in a public setting. Would have to be an executive session. But again, I think it's our fire districts are created based upon state statute, and I think there are limitations on our ability, other than the appointment process, in regards to their actions. But I know that there is a concern in the community, so we shall see what happens. But I think in regards to this appointment, I, like Mr. Brown, Mr. Lang has been a willing volunteer and has a great deal of experience on the fire board. So if the motion is made, I will support it. Mr. Allen.
Seems like everybody does know Mr. Lang, and he grew up in Shawnee, knew him and his father for a long, long time. So really don't have any question on that. I guess I'm a little leery, but the fire chief was a longtime employee of the city of Shawnee, and my interaction there was he was an outstanding individual. So on the surface, I personally have some concerns, but I think I need to stay within the role that I serve here. And as far as I know, again, Mr. Lang is an outstanding individual, but I do have some concerns. Frankly, I didn't know anything until you approached the dais this morning on this.
Okay. Other questions or comments? No. All right, Mr. Brown, if you have a motion.
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move to reappoint A.J. Lang as a 6th District Representative to the Northwest Consolidated Fire District through December 31, 2020.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the appointment of Mr. Lang as noted. Any further questions or discussion? There being none, clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer?
Aye.
Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Clickham?
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown?
Aye.
Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. Moving to the action agenda.
Item number 5, resolution number WD 18-001. Conduct a public hearing and consider authorizing funding for the engineering and construction of a Johnson County wastewater sanitary sewer force main relocation project in coordination with the City of Overland Park, KDOT project number 46 N-0648-01, an amount not to exceed $141,500, and consider approving an agreement with the City of Overland Park, Kansas, reimbursing Johnson County wastewater for a portion of the relocation cost.
Ms. McCarrick, this is a public hearing. Public hearing is open.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. Good morning. Susan Picaric with the Wastewater Department. This morning before you, we have a request for funding and approval to enter into an agreement with the City of Overland Park. City of Overland Park is planning to improve Metcalf Avenue between 159th Street and 167th Street. This is Metcalf running down the center of the map that you see before you. As part of that, a portion of an existing force main that we constructed as part of the Blue River 14 Contract District 1 project needs to be relocated. Essentially, they'll be lowering the Metcalf Avenue through this area, and the depth of our force main interferes with the depth of the newly improved road, so we need to lower the force main there. The force main, just to orient you a little bit here, the force main portion that will be relocated is shown inside this yellow circle. It is part of the pump stations in the upper right-hand corner here, and it serves a development here on the east side of Metcalf Avenue and south of 159th Street. We designed this relocation, and later in the design, the city came to us and actually asked us to do a little redesign and extend the length of the relocation. Once we completed that, we bid the project. J&N Utilities was the low bidder for an amount of $90,480. And so per the purchasing procedures, since that's less than $100,000, the purchasing manager can award that contract. The total estimated cost of this project, including engineering design, the redesign, and the construction phase services, as well as the construction work, is estimated to be $173,000. Per the agreement with the City of Overland Park, they will reimburse the county for our portion, or for their portion of the cost, which we estimate to be about 80% of that $173,000, so roughly $138,000. This is similar to, we do many street and storm projects with the cities. We're usually included with the city's project. In this case, they really needed our force main to be out of their way before they got started. So in this case, we're going first, and then they're going to reimburse us. This was included in our capital program and our financial plan that we presented to the board last year. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Good. Questions? Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. McCarrick, thank you for the briefing. This is kind of more of a strategic perspective. There are probably dozens, if not hundreds, of locations where force mains are in or near right-of-ways. What is our policy, or what has been our practice historically to try to keep them out of the way of thoroughfares or roadways that are designed at some future date to expand? So I'm not objecting to this, but I'm just trying to understand, do we have a policy in place, and do you consider it adequate for those circumstances? And I know there's always a cost benefit, but I just wondered if you had a comment.
Well, first and foremost, the policy that's established in the charter for wastewater is that gravity is always the preferred option. And so if we can't serve by gravity, like as we couldn't in this case, we are serving using a pump station and force main. Right. Certainly, we always work with the cities when we're designing so that we can coordinate any projects that are possible. So, I mean, the reality is we just have to cross roadways and sometimes and other utilities, railroads. So we just work with those entities to try to optimize what both of us are planning in the future. So we take a look at a current and existing, or excuse me, in future. Okay. Does that help? Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, this is a public hearing. If there's anyone present who would like to address the commission on this item, would invite you to the podium, and we'd be glad to receive those comments. If there's no one to be heard, the public hearing is closed and the item is before the commission. Mr. Klicka.
I move the board adopt resolution number WD 18-001 authorizing funding for the engineering construction of a Johnson County wastewater sanitary sewer force main relocation project in coordination with the City of Overland Park KDOT project number 46N-0648-01, an amount not to exceed $141,500, and approving an agreement with the City of Overland Park, Kansas, reimbursing Johnson County wastewater for a portion of the relocation costs.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the resolution number WD 18-001 as recommended. Any further questions or comments? Being none, clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer?
Aye.
Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Clickham?
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown?
Aye.
And Chairman Arlen.
Aye. Motion carried. Next item.
Item number 6, resolution number 006-18, and application number NWCU 3361. Consider a request from Charles and Amy Wunsch, applicant landowners, for a conditional use permit for a detached garage in front of the existing home at 13375 Kimberly Circle on approximately 3.5 acres, zoned RN1, Residential Neighborhood 1 District.
Yes.
Morning,
Jay.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Jay Leipzig, Planning Development Codes Director. This item is before you. It was unanimously approved by the Northwest Zoning Board on December the 18th. It's for a conditional use permit to construct a garage on a property at 13375 Kimberly Circle, zoned RN1. The reason this item is brought before you in the RN1 zoning district restricts placement of garages behind the property line. Since it's a 3.5-acre property, it's not visible, and there are some other development constraints on the street. That's why this item is brought before you as a conditional use permit. As I said, the zoning board recommended approval. Staff is also recommending approval. The only other additional condition is the zoning board recommended that a 20-year term be placed on the conditional use permit, and staff is very comfortable with a 20-year term as well.
Okay. Questions? All right. Thank you, Jay. As the applicant present, any comments you'd like to make?
Yes.
Okay.
Charlie Wunsch, 13375 Kimberly Circle. I just want to bring to the Commission's attention that Mr. Leipzig and his staff are very professional, did a really nice job. They initially opposed what we were proposing, but they worked with us, understood it, and particularly Diane Wickland and Pam Hayhow found them very professional, and you should be proud of the people you have working for you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the Commission on this item? All right. No one to be heard. A motion would be in order. Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to adopt resolution number 006-18, approving a conditional use permit for the detached garage in front of the existing home for the reasons and subject to the stipulations set forth within the resolution.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the resolution and the application that comes to us with approval by staff as well as zoning board. Any further questions or discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer?
Aye.
Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Clickham?
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown?
Aye.
And Chairman Arlen.
Aye. Motion carried. Next item.
Item number 7, resolution numbers 091-17 and 092-17, and application number NWCU 3352. Consider a request from Melissa Morris, applicant and landowner, for 2 conditional use permits to allow an exotic animal, a serval, and to allow a kennel for no more than 15 cats and 2 dogs located at 12240 Moonlight Road. This was remanded from the November 16, 2017 meeting.
Jay.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Jay Leipzig, Planning Development Codes Director. This item was brought to you previously. It was remanded back on December the 11th that the board asked that the zoning board would consider a shorter term for both conditional use permits for the serval cat as well as the kennel. The Northwest Zoning Board met on December the 18th and voted 4-1-1 to approve that with a 3-year term for both the kennel for the serval cat and the kennel for the other animals, limiting that to 15. With that being said, staff has no other additional comments except that the applicants are here be happy to answer any additional questions that you might have.
Okay, once again, this comes to us for approval, both the zoning board and staff, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Questions?
I have one question,
Mr. Schaefer.
How can we verify that the motion mentions one exotic animal, meaning the serval? How can we confirm that there'll only ever be one serval there versus 2 or 3 or 4 in the future? How does that work?
Our staff will do, of course, random checks on these type of things to ensure compliance. There's also a microchipped collar that the animal will be wearing as well to be able to monitor that. But staff will be monitoring it periodically to ensure compliance too.
Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is kind of an aside, but I'll call it the full-blooded serval is considered exotic, and this is a mating ranch or whatever you call it. So the offsprings, they are no longer considered exotic by this definition. Is that what you're saying?
That is correct,
okay.
Commissioner. Yeah, they are considered they're not exotic animals. They're savanna cats essentially, which is a cross between a domestic cat and a serval cat.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Is the applicant present? Any comments they would like to make? All right, is there anyone who would like to address the commission on this item? No one to be heard. Is back before the commission. A motion would be in order. Mr. Brown.
Mr. Chairman, before I make the motion, I just wanted to comment that I've learned a lot about serval cats. more than I thought there could be to know about serval cats. But in dealing with and speaking with the applicant, it has been it is a professional run operation. She has been professional to work with. She has done a great job in communicating with her neighbors. As such, some early objections have been overcome, and so I am supportive of the motion, and I will move to adopt resolution number 091-17, approving a CUP for keeping one exotic animal, which is a serval, subject to the stipulations set forth within the resolution, and I move to adopt resolution number 092-17, approving a CUP for a private kennel, subject to the stipulations set forth within the resolution.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the resolution and the applications as noted that are recommended. Any further questions or discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer?
Aye.
Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Clickham?
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown?
Aye.
Chairman Eilert?
Aye. Motion carried. Are there any other items on the action agenda to be considered?
No, sir.
All right, we'll move to reports and communications. Ms. Postoke Ferguson.
Chairman and Commissioners, you have in your packet 4 items. The first one, I'm going to have Maureen talk about the article that Robert Sullivan wrote.
Thank you, Penny. Attached to the weekly manager's memo this week is the article that Penny just referenced. It was an article written by Robert Sullivan, our recently hired Director of Corrections. It's been published by the Partnership for Public Service in conjunction with the IBM Center for the Business of Government. The article appears in their publication entitled "The Future Has Begun" and and outlines how machine learning is assisting government and policy-related decisions, and highlights us as one of the 4 case studies doing that work. Particularly, this initiative highlights the efforts here in Johnson County around a pilot program that we developed to apply technology to data that connects people who interact with our mental health system, jail, court systems, and our emergency medical services system to, as Robert was quoted, to prevent crises rather than just reacting to them, which is the focus of this work. I would also highlight that not only do we have this current partnership, which was highlighted here, which began with our partnership with the White House and their work around data-driven justice initiatives, led into this work with the University of Chicago, but we have now developed relationships with 3 other educational institutions, including Dartmouth University, working around transportation and the Mental Health Center that several of you are well aware of. University of Notre Dame has now contacted us to talk about what we're doing here in Johnson County, has been intrigued, talking about a potential partnership with them. And finally, I would be remiss if I didn't mention KU on that list that we routinely work with as well. So thank you, and be happy to answer any questions.
Well, that's great, and I know this program, which has been highlighted before, is is very, very important and working well, I think. So, thank you.
Thank you, Maury. The next topic is citizen survey questionnaire, and in your packet, it's page 24. If you look at the page numbers in the middle of the page at the bottom, it's page 24. To the right is the page numbers of the survey. So there's two sets of page numbers, but it says page 1. But on page 24, you'll see the changes highlighted in red. The ones that I would draw your attention to, and certainly we can answer any questions that you have otherwise, are the ones that we changed per your input last week. And if you look at question number on page 26, question number 22, just in case you don't have it, I will read it. Are you aware of the services, it should say transit services. Are you aware of the transit services provided by Johnson County disabled populations? And that's number 22 in the section of the familiarity and satisfaction with county services list. And then section 6 under county public transit system issues are the changes there on page 26 as well. And I'll read those very quickly. Should the county increase services to provide adequate public transit, in other words, buses, van pool, rideshare, and mobile app or on-demand services to meet the needs of the community? And there's a scale of strongly agree to don't know. Should the county increase services for transportation for disabled populations? And then we added, does the county offer adequate public transportation to support access to jobs? Then number 7, we changed it slightly per your input last week. We need to correct a few words in there. It should read, are you open to utilizing public transit provided by Johnson County? In the draft that you have, it says alternate forms, but we took that out because that's included in the list. So those are the changes. Let me see if there's any more I want to highlight. We did add homeless services as number 6 on page 28 within the question of if federal and state funding were changed. How supportive would they be to adding county funds towards that? And that's under number 16. So we did add that. And the other changes we highlighted before. So those are the ones I wanted to point out that we discussed last week. Our plan is, unless there's major concern voiced today, is to proceed with this. If you have any changes by either, you can tell me now or by tomorrow, we'll factor that in. Otherwise, we'll move forward and get that going. And the timeline would be February 1st to get the mail out of the survey. March 15th, the final report delivered to staff, and then a presentation to follow with the Board of County Commissioners following that. So with that, I'll take questions.
Questions? Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Post-Oak-Ferguson, thank you for the briefing. I know you've been working on this. This is kind of a process question going forward. How do you envision using the results from this survey to interact with the budget process or program development as we move forward? Have you given that any thought, or will you be giving that any thought?
I have given that some thought and will continue. I also would say that it's information for you all to use as you see fit, but there are questions in there that could help us when they talk about the list of services, for example, the 22 I referenced earlier, and other questions such as that could help inform decisions going into budget. Satisfaction is also helpful for you all to know. So some of it is staff will use pieces of this, factor that in as we form the budget, and then also for you all to decide how you'd like to use it for your decisions as well.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay, no, continue, that's fine.
Okay.
Again, the timing, we'll have this information back, anticipated when?
We'll get it back as staff in March, so mid-March, so as soon as we can process it and turn it around to you all. So I would say end of March, beginning of April.
All right, thank you. And again, that will be plenty of time in regards to budget considerations, I think, or at least final budget considerations. All right, thank you. Other items?
Yes, planning workshop. Jay is going to highlight that very quickly. It is on your calendars. You've been invited, but just a reminder for you all and others.
Good morning. Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, Jay Leipzig, Planning Development Codes Director. Yeah, I'm pleased to report that we have a planning workshop scheduled for next Tuesday, the 23rd. This will be an annual event for us to have to talk a little bit about the roles of planning commissioners, roles of zoning board members, rules in terms of speaking at public meetings and public hearings and that type of thing. So it's really a chance to get everybody together from all these boards and the commission, talk about planning items, also the importance of the comprehensive plan, the importance of our subdivision regulations, and how those things should all work together. We have Jim Kaup with the Kaup Law Firm out of Topeka will be our presenter that evening. Mr. Kaup is basically a statewide expert on legal matters. He was a legal counsel for the Kansas League of Municipalities, and so very pleased with the program that he's put together, and I think it will be a great evening. Dinner begins at 5:15. The program will begin at 6, and we should be finished by 8 p.m. that evening.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I've known Jim for some time. He does a good job, so thank you for putting this together.
Okay, one final item is the SERI report, the January edition, and regarding labor force and employment, 2.8% unemployment rate for November 2017, and that is the lowest from the previous 5 years. It is the lowest mark. And then the residential building permits, year-to-date for November, for single-family building permits, 1,842. In a matter of perspective, that's the highest compared to the last 5 years. And then number of multifamily building permits issued year-to-date is a little bit different in that it's 936 permits year-to-date compared to the average of the last 5 years, 1,330. So with that, I'll take questions.
Questions? Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Postoke-Ferguson, the 2.8 seems freakishly low. You said last 5 years. Was it 5 years ago that it was that low, or is this just as far back as the data go?
Well, in the report it says it has the average for the previous 5 years, the highest and the lowest, and the lowest was noted in 2015 for the previous 5 years.
Okay. It's just, but the deeper question is this low unemployment, and that it's been hovering very low. What pressure is that putting on salaries, and particularly as it relates to livable wage? Do we have any, and I've raised this issue before, do we have any sense on that? Is there any way to get, because some people say, well, you have to have 2 or 3 or 4 jobs in order to live in Johnson County, but it seems like unemployment that low would have a lot of pressure, or would generate pressure on wages. Is it, or I just don't see that in the data, and I have not seen anything.
I can't speak to that. I don't know, Joe.
I think it would be difficult to specifically address that. Walmart made an announcement the other day that they're increasing their minimum wage to $11 an hour. I'm not sure even that is a livable wage.
No, fair point. Fair point.
Quite frankly, so, as you look at wages that are paid in many of the warehouse operations, I will call them broadly that.
Does the Federal Reserve do any analysis on wage?
They may for the Kansas City region,
yeah,
but that would be the place that one would probably have to go to find out. Mr. Klicka,
Mr. Chairman, thank you. When we have a high unemployment rate, it points to a number of issues that we have to deal with from a government standpoint, especially in the areas of social services and so forth. But when this unemployment rate goes down like it is, it puts us into a different type of situation with competition for jobs that's going to be out there. The expectations from the business community, from government standpoint, we'll have some different perspectives, and we need to be, cognizant of that and be able to start responding to it. And I know many of you know I'm an advocate of alternative transportation modes and things like that. That's kind of one of those things that starts driving issues such as that of trying to increase access, because the competition for employees will be going well beyond Johnson County into the other adjacent counties to try to recruit. So I appreciate your staying on top of it.
I will add that our staff does workforce trend analysis leading up to the budget. I'm not sure the status of that right now, but certainly HR and others are watching that and will advise us through the budget process.
I appreciate that.
Also, just a clarification on something that Commissioner Ashcraft asked. When I mentioned the previous 5 years on unemployment rate, that was to that particular month. My other permit information was year-to-date, so just clarifying that. There may have been months that were lower.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, any other questions? Anything else? Okay. Turning to commission comments, Mr. Schaefer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I want to congratulate you for the receipt and reception that you gave and the speech you gave last Monday evening at the Martin Luther King dinner sponsored by Henry. Nice job, well done, and thank you for your effort, and congratulations on the receipt of the award.
Excuse me, I haven't forgotten about you, Mr. Otto. We will come back to that.
Oh, no, we can go on.
Go right ahead.
We'll conclude.
And I give the floor to Mr. Otto,
We'll
okay?
conclude the commission comments, and then you're up next, so be prepared.
Okay.
Mr. Klicka.
I also want to extend my congratulations to you as far as recognition goes, and apart from that, no other comments.
All right. Mr. Ashcraft.
I'm going to pile on a little bit because while Mr. Schaefer, I think, said it well, I would say, Mr. Chairman, you were the high point in terms of presentations. You were exceptionally well prepared, and I don't know if you were reading something or you were speaking off the cuff, but the history that you offered on Johnson County MLK activity or
African
American race relations and involvement by the individuals that have had an impact on our community. You did it exceptionally well. So did you have notes, or were you speaking off the cuff?
No, I had visited with Mindy Love several days prior to, and I went back and relied on my old classroom experiences to help me in that regard.
You were head and shoulders above everyone else there. It was very, very well done.
Well, thank you. Mr. Allen?
Also would like to congratulate you on the award. It's very well deserved. Thank you.
Joe Strauss.
I'll do the same because I remember when we were sitting there, Michael and I had the same thoughts about how well he had spoke, and that was very well done. I'd also encourage everyone to remember that there's still stuff going on with the libraries and the parks and the various things that they're offering at the Arts and Heritage Center and the libraries. Also had the opportunity on Tuesday and Wednesday to start Leadership Overland Park, which I had a great time there. It's a great class of highly motivated individuals that want to learn more about Overland Park. But we had our project manager from Turner Construction who's working on the Lenexa Library. So I told him he's got to make sure the library comes first and then Leadership Overland Park second. So I have to make sure he's got that library coming on time. So.
Thank you. Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. Congratulations to you. As everyone has said, very proud of you. Additionally, wanted to comment that I had written a post that had appeared on Facebook, which is one vehicle I use as a platform to communicate with constituents. That was picked up by the Kansas City Star and a couple of other outlets across the state. I am pushing that issue of public education versus everything else, and it has nothing to do with pushing back on public education itself. I'm very proud of our school systems. I love the fact I have 3 kids in the Olathe School District and what they receive and the benefit I get for what I pay for that. I struggle with the gradient that says, though, that public education is standing always hand out at the legislature and comes second to everything else, and that was stated by Alan Root, the attorney representing the school districts that are in the lawsuit, when he stated that others may have to suffer. The problem I have with that is that I know the faces of those that have to suffer. I know who they are. I've met those people, and I am not okay with those people having to suffer so that the school districts continue to get their money first. So wanted to just clarify that point, and I will continue to push that issue. Had dinner last night with the Consulate General of Canada, Stéphane Lessard, who is based in Denver. regarding Johnson County overall for economic development, and specifically in Edgerton. I will be having a follow-up meeting with him next week to discuss those issues further. Wanted to comment that as I sat here today listening to a couple of issues having to do with our planning department, I'm thrilled with how our planning department is operating. And Jay, congratulations. I'm thrilled to work with you, and you are doing a great job. Very, very impressed. It's running smooth. This is good news. And then finally, I attended a grand opening at the Midwest Gateway, 2 huge boxes in Edgerton yesterday. It's big and it's pretty as big boxes go, and if somebody's looking to locate a 400,000 square foot business, they have 2 boxes ready to go. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have a couple of items. Number one, several of us will be attending the Northeast Johnson County Chamber event at noon today at the Marriott. It's a program of where the Northeast mayors report on activities in their cities. And then we have a study session this afternoon, returning from that luncheon at 1:30 p.m. And that we'll discuss budget process, strategic objectives. That will begin at 1:30 p.m. in room 201, and media as well as public are invited. Also, I have earlier distributed the liaison and other board appointments to you all for 2018. The liaison appointments are effective February 1. So I would like to have a motion to confirm those, including Mr. Allen's agreement to continue to serve as vice chair for another year.
Moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to confirm those appointments. Any questions? Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer?
Aye.
Commissioner Allen?
I don't know if I should vote or abstain.
You're okay.
Aye.
We're all on there.
Commissioner Clickham?
Yes.
Commissioner Osterhaus?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown?
Aye.
Chairman Abbott?
Aye. Motion carried. Yes, everybody's name is on that list somewhere. So, okay, Mr. Otto, are you still awake? All right. Legislative update.
Good morning, Aaron Otto with the County Manager's Office, and this report got better with age, so. This is the second week of the legislature, which means there's a lot of bills being introduced. There's a couple just to highlight for you that will be worth monitoring and tracking. But Overland Park State Senator John Skubal has introduced a highway task force bill. That could lead to a group that would come together and start working on another 10-year comprehensive transportation plan. We're in the final phases and steps of the current one, so this would be kind of preparing for the future. The legislature did have 2 days worth of experts from across the state and across the country being brought in to talk about autonomous cars and self-driverless cars. So that will be interesting to see where that goes forward in the future. There were a couple other bill introductions, one by both a Republican and Democrat in the 2 different houses, that would stop the implementation of CanCare 2.0 with some concerns that need to be addressed first in their eyes, dealing with the current CanCare 1.0, things like processing Medicare applications and that backlog. And then there was one other bill introduced that would be of note to Johnson County, and that is that there was a bill put in for the budget and human resources policies of a county to be applicable to election commissioner offices, and the 4 that exist in the biggest counties in the state, Johnson, Sedgwick, Shawnee, and Wyandotte. So that would make them subject to the approved HR and budget process as done by the rest of the county departments. They're also working on a number of appointments. There were 17 gubernatorial appointments that have been made and are now confirmed for places like Capers, the Kansas Racing and Gaming Commission, and the Board of Regents. A couple of little just notes going forward. There was one other bill that was just introduced yesterday from the Johnson County Sheriff's Office that would repeal the prohibition about serving items on Saturdays. We'll see what traction that gets. And then one reminder about next week, next Wednesday from 4 to 7 o'clock is KAC and LKM's joint day on the Hill. And so for those of you going, there'll be some details coming out about when to leave on Wednesday with the program and then reception to follow. And that's all I have.
Yes, Mr. Ashcraft.
Mr. Chairman, just a process question. Mr. Otto, I'm happy to see your name under the legislative update, but Ms. Green had been doing it. Going forward, will it be Mr. Otto or Ms. Green, or will they be working together during the legislative session? Just a clarification.
Cindy's on point. Erin's filling in because she's out today.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, good. Lucky for you.
Mr. Otto, good job of filling in today.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, that concludes our regular agenda. We will adjourn and reconvene in a few minutes for agenda review for next week's meeting. Thank you all very much, and enjoy the warm weather this weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'll be able to wash my